everyone, this is A Loop Through a Loop. I'm Tara. Welcome to the end of April. We're going to talk about all the knitting that we got through for this month. So before we jump into anything, weather update is that it's sunny with a high around 60, 65 today. It's been like this the past couple of days, which is great. It's fantastic. This is like optimal spring weather right now. So it's sunshiny to help lift the mood, but it's cool enough to throw on something warm and cozy. It's kind of just like a Goldilocks time right now. So to find out more about what I'm wearing right now, let's jump into the FO section. This is a mid-month check-in. It's Easter Sunday. We're just enjoying a quiet, calm afternoon at home. So I thought I'd sneak in a few minutes to update you on the first half of this month. I'm going to start with a couple of past project updates, and then I'll go in really quickly to FOs. The first thing is when I was finishing all my FOs and washing them, I decided to go ahead and block my half wrap because I've never done that. And this is my original one, made in linen quill. It did grow a little bit with blocking. I did make the smaller size, so it's still not as big as the larger one, but if you haven't blocked your half wrap and you're entertaining the idea, you might go ahead and try it. It has the same softness as before, but it has a better drape, kind of like everything's relaxed a little bit. So I wanted to update you on that. And then the other thing that I needed to update you on, or I wanted to update you on, is I had made Velocore designed by Andrea Mowry, but I made a small one for my girls. And our oldest daughter grew out of it, so I had our youngest daughter wear it, and she loved it. And I was doing laundry. It got thrown in the wash, which I knew it was going in the wash, but then it ended up in the dryer. So I have now turned it into like a little basket. What I did is I stitched up the neckband, and then I've left this stuff in here. I didn't cut anything off, but I did kind of like squared corners, like how I make my project bags. And so right now, I wouldn't call this done by any means, but it is now just kind of like a little basket, and I can put things in it, like yarn. It could be a little yarn, like a little yarn basket. I got my own little yarn bowl, felted yarn bowl. So that was kind of just make do and see what I could do with it. I didn't want to throw it out. So the next thing I'm going to do is go through the whips that I've finished so far for this first half of the month. I'm going to go in chronological order. The first thing I finished was my cardigan. I've mentioned before that this was loosely based off of Andrea Mowry's Jenny cardigan for construction, and then I incorporated some stitch details from Caitlin Hunter's Zweig pattern, and then my sleeves are from my Japanese stitch Bible. So this is the stitching book that I used for my sleeves, and if you have this book, the motif is on page 89, and it is arrangement 145 if you're interested in looking at it. I really like this book. I was very intimidated when I first got it because it's all charted and not all the stitches are, real easy. You have to kind of take time to figure it out. Learning to read charts for me is like learning to read all over again. Like you have to build up fluency and that takes just lots of practice. And so I've used this book for several hats and now a couple sweaters. And I will tell you that each time I go back and work with a chart, it does get easier. But you have to want to do it. That's the only thing. But this is one of my favorite knitting books that I own. I don't own many. I'm pretty picky just because depending on where you get them, they can be kind of pricey. If you're looking for perhaps a used book, I would check out abebooks.com. I've ordered several books, one knitting book and then some kids books from there. And I've gotten them used from independent booksellers. So if you don't know about Abe Books and you're interested in looking for a book, you might check that out. My cardigan was worked from the bottom up. Last month I had both sleeves done and I was about to connect the sleeves to the body, and I've done that. In retrospect, would I have done it differently? No, because I still want this motif to be the direction that it is, but the yoke was difficult. It was like, oh yeah, whenever I'm on the right side, I have to remember about the motif on the body and the motif on the sleeve. And when I'm going backward, when I'm going back on the wrong side of the work, I get a rest on the body, but I still have to work the pattern on the sleeves. So there wasn't any like stop and rest. It was keep all the motifs and stitch patterns going, plus also pay attention to where I am decreasing and how many times I need to decrease. Once I got to where the decreases met this side panel of this, it's a 4 cable stitch pattern. Once it met my raglan, then I had to go into the actual motif and make my decreases that I needed to make for the raglan inside the motif, which in my head I thought, I'm glad that I've made several hats, because then I could kind of know somewhat intuitively where to put those decreases. I have had a couple of people comment online saying, oh, I hope you publish the pattern. Maybe one day, never say never, but it's not going to happen today or tomorrow. There was a lot of thinking involved, and that was just making my sweater. So I can't make any promises, but maybe in the future. So then after I finished with connecting the body, finished the yoke, then I went ahead and picked up stitches for the band, neck band, and the collar. And I followed Andrea Mowry's instructions for how she did the collar for Jenny. What I figured is I needed to pick up all my stitches, and then I needed to work 55% of the stitches and then start my short rows back and forth. And so that's what I did. I just remembered, okay, here's how many stitches I have on the entire neckband. 55% of that is this many stitches. I'm going to knit that many stitches, and then I'm just going to go and work back and forth how she recommends in her pattern. Instead of doing a garter neckband like she had in the Jenny pattern, I did a 2x2 rib because that's my favorite, and it just felt more cohesive with the rest of the cardigan. I knit all of the ribbing on US 4s, the sleeves and the body was knit on US 6 needles. It took about 10 weeks, which I was really surprised. That seems like it was really fast because I intended this to take way longer, but that to me just tells me how much I really wanted this, that how much of me was invested into it. Because I've had other projects that were way more simple and they took way longer. So if you have any questions, leave them below. As always, my Ravelry page is linked below, and that has some other details into it. And I started with, before I forget, I started with 10 balls of Rowan Alpaca Classic in the color Sweet Satin. And I have 2 and probably 2.5, 2 2/3 skeins left over. So in my head, I'm thinking, well, if I save this, I can buy a couple skeins here and there. And then over time, once I get to another sweaters quantity, so once I have, what, 7, probably about 7 more skeins of this, then I can make my next sweater. And I can just buy a few skeins at a time until I get there. I'm not completely worried about color lots because for this cardigan, I calculated that I was actually going to need more skeins. So I ordered 3 more online and the color matched just fine. So I know that's a gamble and that's a risk, but it was also a risk I was willing to take. So I think that might be maybe my next goal would be every month, maybe buy a couple skeins here and there, maybe 2 or 3 skeins. I don't know. I'll have to think about it, but until I get a sweaters quantity, and then I really want to make like just a really basic sweatshirty, wear every day kind of a pullover. But it's okay if that happens in the future because with my pregnant belly right now, pullovers don't really fit too great. And since it is a fuzzier yarn, I don't necessarily want baby's head and like mouth near all the fluff, just because I wouldn't like my mouth near all the fluff. I mentioned before, this is my favorite yarn in this color, but I will say that it is similar to mohair in that it is not easy to rip out. There were a couple of times where I was working the bobbles and it got stuck when I was trying to take it out to redo the bobble. So if this is a yarn you're wanting to try out, keep that in mind, that if you make a mistake, ripping out is not easy. It is a pain. It is. But for me, it was worth it. I am wearing it next to skin. I just have on like a maxi sundress with like little bitty straps. And so this is on my bare arms, some of my back, a little bit up front. And when I first put it on, there's a little bit of initial itch, but I've worn it, probably for an hour or so now, and it just feels cozy. It's not itchy anymore. The next thing I finished was my muscle bird, and I used up all the yarn that I could. I'm going to say that I prefer it with the brim folded up. I knit this on US 3s. I used
Whoa, this is a tennis.
I did like working with the 16-inch circular needles. I would knit this pattern again in a heartbeat. I would not use this yarn. This was Yarn Bee's authentic hand-dyed 100% merino. And the only reason I would not use this again is because this color bled in the wash a lot. So I have rinsed Holst garn. I've done 2 or 3 rinses whenever I've gone to block a project, and then the spinning oil and everything is taken care of. I rinsed this with hot water 5 or 6 times to try to get all of the residual dye out, and I think there's still just a little bit in there. The fabric, it's really soft. It feels really good. It's been blocked. It's really nice, but this color just is a no-go. I will not do this again. But what I would like to do is, for my next muscle bird, I'd like to go to our LYS with my daughter, let her pick out one skein of fingering weight yarn, and then let that be my next one. And that'll probably not happen for a while. My most recent finished object is a fancy hen. Now I have knit fancy hens for all of our kids. So this is our oldest daughters, our sons.
This is a red, blue.
Yeah, youngest daughter.
What's in our dad?
and then finally for baby coming in May. And I followed the same exact pattern, but I feel kind of bad. His hen is quite a bit smaller than the other 3, but it doesn't mean I love him any less. So with our oldest daughters, I followed this one exactly the pattern. Then with the other 2, I had gotten kind of creative with color work. And then for little guy, I went back to the original pattern. I just took off the color work around the neckband. But you'll notice all of the color work is in the same color blue. And that is because it's all knit. I think this is Spotted You in the color Wildcat, since we live in Lexington, Kentucky. This skein of yarn was picked out by my oldest daughter, and so I've decided that it just has to go in it has to go for all the hens. All the hens have the same color work. Since this is our last baby, I'm gonna hold on to this skein of yarn until I have grandbabies. So that's everything. That's all for this mid-month checkup. Sam and I are gonna go hang out, and I'll catch you at the end of the month. And that's everything that I was able to get done in April. I feel very peaceful and really good about where I am with my knitting and where my projects are at this time. I don't feel overwhelmed. Everything that I am currently working on for whips is at a really good cruise control. After making my cardigan, my brain just needs something real nice and easy. Kind of getting ready for when baby comes. As of right now, we have about 1 more month until our son is born. And some days I have lots of energy and I can get some chores done around the house, and mentally I'm with it. So I could do something that requires some more critical thinking. But I have noticed in the past month or so, that there are some times where it almost feels like I've taken a sedative and I could be in the middle of doing something and I'm just out. I'm just tired. My brain just turns off and I just have to lay down and sleep. I can't bring myself to do anything that requires some kind of problem solving, deep thinking. So I needed to get all of my projects to a place where it was just kind of coasting, nice and easy. If I cast on anything new, it needs to be something that can be just relaxing. I can just pick up, do whatever I need to do, and not get stressed out or worried about what was going on. So all that rambling to say, let's talk about the works in progress. So the first thing that I want to update you on is my half wrap. And if you follow me on Instagram, you might already know what happened with this project. But if you don't, everything is back into balls of yarn. I went ahead and frogged the whole wrap. And I will say it has nothing to do with the yarn, nothing to do with the pattern. It has everything to do with, it just wasn't quite the right time. There's no frustration or ill feelings about the project. I still very much love this yarn and I still very much love the pattern. But it had everything to do with timing. It just, I finished the second skein and I had joined, I think I was maybe 1 or 2 rows into joining the third skein. And I just thought, I think I'm just gonna frog this for now and then come back to it. That's just kind of where I am. And it was just I'm just gonna do it. It felt nice to be able to frog without any emotional attachment. It was a very, I don't know, would you call it an out-of-body experience? Just kind of like, yeah, no, we'll try this again later. And I think I could separate myself emotionally from the project because I always worked on it just little bits of time, or little bits at a time. I never sat down and was just like chugging along on it. So because I only worked on it here or there, I don't really have a well-defined sense of how much time I had actually spent on it. So it just seemed like, well, I was only working on it a little bit here and there. So it's all back in skeins in its little bag. I'm going to keep the skeins in the basket because it just works for me right now. But I will come back to it. I've also toyed with either I'll cast on and make it a half wrap version 2.0, or I have 3 skeins of both colors, and in fingering weight for my measurements of what I like for a garment, I could actually get 2 sweaters out of this. So in my head, I'm also thinking maybe I just need a little bit more time to think, do I really want this to be a half wrap, or do I want this to be 2 sweaters? And because I already have some yarn back here that I know for sure that I want to be a half wrap. So maybe these colors, these skeins are supposed to be something else. And since that's not real clear to me right now, it's okay for it to just sit and look pretty. I feel like I've noticed in the past, oh gosh, let's see. I got into knitting pretty heavy in November of 2019, and I've been going steadily since then. And I have talked on here previously about how I've noticed I can tell the decisions that I make and my mindset about my making have changed and grown. That's an evolution. And I feel like right now I'm going through another like metaphorical turn in my knitting as far as decision making about projects. When I start a new hobby, I kind of just allow myself to fall into the creative fun of it. I get the best materials that I can, try different things. There's not a lot of forethought put into it. But at this point in the game, after a couple of years now, and I still love knitting, I still enjoy it as much as I did when I started. Now I'm starting to have more forethought into what I want to make. You know, when it comes to my kids grow really fast. So I don't have any problem going out and going to the craft store and just getting some baby yarn or whatever and knitting them something up just quick and fun and easy like I would have when I started. But when it comes to knitting for myself, I'm knitting for myself for keeps. At least that's what I tell myself. I still let myself have some like creative fun with it. But if I'm going to really invest in something, so like this sweater was knit with a yarn that is a little bit more expensive than I would typically buy. But I also waited like a year and a half before it turned into this sweater. There was a lot of forethought that went into this. So I'm thinking more about what I want to make and how long I'm going to have that item. I plan on having this for forever. So I think that's part of why it was so okay for me to frog the half wrap and the progress that I made, because I'm really trying to think in the long term what's something that I'm really just going to love. So moving on to my current whips that I have on the needles. As far as works in progress go, Sam's in here with us, so if you hear any side noise, we have company. All of my current works in progress are new for this month. You haven't seen them. I haven't talked about them. The first one that I cast on, this is the Mackworth pullover designed by Andrea Mowry. I'm knitting this in Holstgarn Super Soft. For the colors that I used, you can check out my Ravelry. You're okay. You can check out my Ravelry project page. I have them all listed. I worked through the yoke pretty quickly, about 4.5 inches onto the body. Right now I'm debating on whether or not I like the neckline, and I won't have a final decision on that until after it's finished and I wash and block and then check the fit. If I don't like the way that this neckline is sitting, then I will rip it out and re-knit it to what I would like better. My needle sizes are what's recommended in the pattern. Like I said, everything is on my Ravelry project page. I like the fabric density that I'm getting. It's not too loose, it's not too stiff. It is whole super soft, so it's a little woolly, there's a little itch to it. But I'm interested to see what this will look like after it's been washed and blocked and I can get some of that spinning oil out of it. But from there, I don't really have much else to tell you. The color work, this color work up here at the top and down here at the bottom is pretty intuitive. It's easy to remember. You're only doing 2 colors at once. This section right here, there are a couple rows where you're doing 3 colors at a time. Not necessarily as intuitive, but it wasn't horrible. I've watched several knitters talk about doing color work yokes and stuff like that, and they talk about how how it's so fun to work the yoke because you just want to know what's coming next. I don't know if I find the color work yoke fun, as in I just want to keep going what's next, so much as I want to keep going and just get the yoke over with, so then I can just kind of cruise control on the rest of it. I don't know. Color work is still like a love-hate. Maybe I shouldn't say hate. I was like, I don't hate color work, but it's kind of like I'm wishy-washy on it. Like, I like it, but I don't always like doing it. And so there's that. And I'm keeping it in my favorite bag. Although my favorite bag now has some competition because I made another bag and I really like this one. As far as the diagonal zipper, this was a mistake that I just kind of had to wing it. I cut my lining fabric too slim for the zipper, and I thought, well, I don't want to waste this fabric. I want to use what I have. How can I make this work? So I just slanted the zipper. And it's kind of nice because down here it's shallow, so I can pick things up pretty easy. It was like a Bob Ross happy accident. So inside is my newest cast on, and this is a pattern I'm now knitting for the 3rd time. This is Andrea Mowry's design of Birds of a Feather, this time in pink. I just want to work on things that are pink. I don't know if it's because we're expecting a boy, so I just want to do girly things. I don't know. The mohair that I'm using is from Sandnes Garn. It's their thin silk mohair. Texture wise, it is soft, but the first thing I thought when I started working it on the first mohair section is I think Knit Picks mohair is a little bit softer, but Sandnes Garn has more color options, so that's something to keep in mind. And price wise, the Sandnes Garn is a little bit more pricey, but I wanted to try it out. The fingering weight yarn with the black speckles in it, this is a Hobby Lobby yarn that I've used before, and it's the authentic hand dyed and plush blush. I don't not like that Hobby Lobby hand dyed yarn necessarily, but I don't know that I like it enough to keep buying it. I don't know that it's worth it to me to do that. we'll see how it works up. I'm doing everything to pattern. This is one, since it's the third time I've made it, I'm kind of just coasting along. Like I said, I mean, the thing I have to think the most on is the feather and fan lace part. But the more I do it, the easier it's getting for me to kind of keep track of what I'm doing. So I just started that. These are the only 2 whips that I'm working on. I'm still thinking about what I want to cast on next after one of them is finished, but I'm not necessarily obsessed about it or overthinking it. I'm just kind of going with the flow. So really, that's everything. Pretty simple, pretty short. And I realized I still have my my blue, is it my blue light glasses? Yeah, I still have my blue light glasses on because this morning I just updated my free blanket pattern that's on Ravelry. It's called Claire's Blanket. I just uploaded a new revised edition of it. Kind of took out some old out-of-date terminology and put in some abbreviations, terminology that's kind of, I think, a little more knitter friendly. At least I hope so. And like I said, it's free. So if you have a baby coming in your future, you can get that pattern for free. It was designed for my daughter, so it is kind of more feminine in style. Yeah, that's updated. Or if you're someone who had already downloaded the pattern, get rid of the old pattern and download a new revised copy. I think you'll like it better. That's all that I have for you for this month. Like I said, May's podcast may come out maybe a little bit early, or it may be late for an unknown amount. Sorry. Hot for an unknown amount of time because baby will come. The first month for me after having a baby is always the biggest adjustment period. So I'll either see you at the end of May or sometime hopefully soon thereafter. Until then, happy knitting, and I hope I'll see you soon. Bye.